If you lived in Colonial Times, pages 42 to 49. What did colonial houses look like? Houses in early colonial days were not big or fancy, and they were not warm. In wintertime, a colonial house was so cold that if you were writing a letter, the ink might freeze right on your pen. To make the house warmer, the people burned giant logs in the fireplace. Some logs were so big that it took two horses to drag them into the house. How many rooms did a colonial house have? Houses in early colonial days had one room. It was called the keeping room. The family cooked and ate and worked in the keeping room. Here, too, the grown-ups and the babies slept. Older children slept in the attic. Did big families live in big houses? When more and more children were born, the family needed more and more space, so they built more rooms. No matter how big the house was, the family still used the keeping room for cooking, eating, sleeping, and working. There are many kinds of houses. One kind of house looked like the box in which the salt was kept in colonial days. It is still called a salt box house today. What did the furniture look like? Most people had plain furniture. They made it themselves. They didn't make much furniture because there was not much room to put it. In many houses, there was only one chair. It belonged to the father. No one else was allowed to sit in it. The rest of the family sat on wooden benches, or they sat on the settle. The settle was a long wooden bench with high sides and a high back. It was not comfortable, but at least it was warm in the winter. The high sides and the high back kept out the chilling winds that blew through the house. What did people sleep on? Mothers and fathers slept in a jack bed. The jack bed was short to save space. Mothers and fathers did not sleep stretched out. The bed was not long enough. The jack bed was high, so that a smaller bed for the younger child could fit under it. The smaller bed was called a trundle bed. At night, the trundle bed was pulled out from under the jack bed. Babies slept in their cradles near the fireplace. Older children slept in the attic on bags filled with scratchy straw, or on softer mattresses filled with feathers or bits of wool. Where did people hang their clothes? People hung their clothes on pegs on the wall. Where did people take baths? There were no bathrooms in Colonial House. There was no running water either. People had to go outside the house for their water. They carried water home from the well in wooden buckets. There was no way to make sure that the water was pure, so they did not drink it. They did not often bathe in it either. When they did take a bath, they stood up in a big wooden tub of water in front of the fireplace. Did people work hard in colonial days? People had to work hard in colonial days. They had to because almost everything they used, they made themselves. Think of the clothes the people wore. There was spinning and weaving and knitting to be done. The spinning wheels and looms were homemade too. Think of the food they ate. There were gardens to weed, rows and rows of corn to hoe, food to cook, bread to bake, butter to churn, no end to work. Think of the dishes they used. There were trenchers and bowls and spoons and mugs to make. Think of the houses they lived in. There were beds and tables and chairs and brooms and buckets and barrels to make. And when these things got broken, they had to be fixed. Making soap and making candles took more than a day. Sometimes neighbors came to help, and the job went faster. This is the end of today's lesson.